Hey, hello everyone. You can see here I've got the Harrington Street file with the walls set up for the ground floor outline complete, and I'm going to continue on from there and begin setting out that building in context by putting in some of the surroundings, or essentially this site. So to do that, I'm going to need to set up some additional measurements. Uh, First thing you should think about is getting all of the required plans. So we have there the ground floor plan set up with the image as I did previously, and you'll need to continue and repeat that for each level if you haven't done that already. So again, just to repeat that process quickly, I'm going to right click on that level 1 FFL view, duplicate view, and then duplicate, and then I will right click on that new view name with copy 1 and go to rename, and we'll call that level 1 FFL plan image. Okay, so for the next step you'll need to have the views all exported from the original PDF file as JPEG files, as I showed you previously using Photoshop. And then under Insert we can go to Image, and then here I'm going to find my first floor plan and open. And I'm just going to place that very roughly into my view by clicking, and then with the image still selected I'm going to click the Move tool, snap to a point on the plan on the corner there of the wall, and then bring that across to the corner of the wall that I've drawn in Revit. So then I'll zoom out so I can see that whole wall on the image, and again still with that image file selected I'm going to click the Scale tool. So I'm going to click a point again on that corner. This time my second point I will click on the other end of that wall, and now I'm going to bring it back, and the third point I'm going to click onto the corner of the wall that I've drawn in Revit again. So you can see how that lines up fairly well, maybe a little bit low, so I'm just going to use the arrow key to try and nudge that up a little bit so that it lines up. And there we go, that's close enough. Okay, so you need to repeat that for each level, and so before I go on I'll just save this file. Right, and so we also need to have the elevations to take some references or measurements. But what I found is that it's not really that useful to have them in Revit, because we really just need them to measure from. We don't need to have them to draw over as a drawing reference as such. So I found it's actually easier to use AutoCAD, because it gives you options for measuring that you don't have in Revit essentially. So I'm going to, in AutoCAD, start a new file, making sure I use the ACAD ISO template, you can see there. Okay, so then on the Insert tab, going to go to Attach, and then find the file that I've extracted previously, which is the east elevation, which is the Harrington Street elevation, and then open. And here I'm going to leave insertion point ticked, but I'm going to make sure the specify on screen option for scale is turned off, and then I'm going to type in a scale factor of 1000. In fact, sorry, I know this is a very small image. I'm going to make that 10,000, sorry. So 4 zeros after the 1. And then I'll make the insertion point just anywhere on the screen by clicking. And I'll double click with the wheel. and we'll have a look at what we can measure there. Now notice that I've got the crosshairs here set to 100% and grey. So if you haven't done that, when you right click on the command line and go to options, you can set the crosshair size here. So it's usually on 5% initially. You can drag that all the way over to 100 if you want them to go across the screen, which I find is often easier. And then under colours, you can find the crosshairs option and go to select colour, and then just choose any colour you like. So I like to use this grey when I'm working with images because they often have a white background. There we are. So again, now back on the Home tab, I'm going to use the Measure tool and measure here from the ground floor level with Ortho on. So I'm going to turn on the Ortho option down the bottom and then measure up to my first floor height, which you can see is, let's say, 1620. So 1.6 meters or 1.62. So it's not too far off. If you don't scale it by the amount that I did, then it would be much further out than that. We still, of course, need to scale that to make it the measurement that we want. So I'm going to work out that measurement by using the inbuilt AutoCAD calculator. I'm just going to type CAL, enter, and then type in our number 18903, which is the first floor level, minus 15100, which is the ground floor level. Again, both in millimeters there. So when I press enter, you can see that the distance between those two levels is 3803. So they have either been very accurate in their measurements or maybe just didn't know how to round things off. Either way, that's the measurement we'll use. So 3803 is what we want it to be. At the moment it is 1620. So those are the two numbers we need to use. I'm going to use the scale tool now. On the ribbon up there you can see scale. Oops. I'm going to select the image just by clicking onto the edge there. You can see one found. Enter. And now type in my numbers. So it's the size you want it to be, 03803, over the size it is, which is again 1620. Sorry, making sure you do that for the scale factor, so I'll just do that one more time. I typed it in for the base point, so I'll do scale again, selecting the border there, enter, and again, now it's going to ask for the base point, so I'll just type 0,0 this time. And now type in my numbers again, so 3803 / 1620, enter. So that should have scaled it up a little bit, almost double, well, actually a bit more than double. And we'll then go and use the measure tool and see what we've got now. So I'm going to use, again, just, if you're not sure, the center of the line, if it's a computer done drawing, the center is where you should be measuring from. So there you can see, going up to there, 38, or 37, 3800 is about there. That's close enough, 3805, that's pretty good. Okay, so that now is the correct scale. So I'm going to save this. And bring in the second image and just repeat that process. So again, insert, attach. If you didn't check before, you need to make sure that it does say all image files down the bottom to bring up JPEGs. So here's my North or Essex Street elevation. Open, and again I'm going to type in 10,000 as my scale factor, leaving insertion point with the specify on screen option ticked. So again, OK. Click to place that very roughly. And again, using the measure tool, we'll measure the distance there between my two levels. So let's say that's 1180. Yep, 1180 will be close enough. Okay, so now again I'm going to use the scale tool. Select the border there. Enter. So 3803 over, this time 11.8. Well, it was actually 1182. So let's go with that. And again, I've gone and started typing madly before realizing that it's actually asking for the base point, so we'll type 0, 0. There we are. And now 3083 / 1182. And don't you love it when it does that, so I have to type again 3803 / 1182. There we are. So you can always check, if you're not sure if it's been entered properly, it should say on the command line what has been entered at each step in the process. So you can see there that's scoring correctly. Now I use 0, 0 as the base point, which means it will have scaled over to the right, but I can easily just select that image, go back to the Home tab, bring up Move, and let's save a bit of time by picking that up on the image there. Turn ortho off, and line that up just visually with the ground floor line in the first elevation. So how's that looking? That's still a little bit off. So I'm just going to use Move again, so I'll select the image, go back to Home, Move. Obviously if you use shortcuts that's a little bit faster, but it doesn't hurt here just to use the ribbon. So I'm just going to bring that back up. So pretty good. Okay, so you can see those levels now lining up as I move the cursor there across the two images. By the second floor it's out a little bit, so you could, if you want to, scale them a little bit more, but really for measuring for our purposes that is absolutely fine. So again, I'll just save this file. Okay, so now you've got a reference that you can use to take all sorts of measurements from the levels that we're going to work with initially, so the various heights that we want from the ground, but also you can even take detailed measurements for your windows, lots of other things. So here you can see I can easily measure off this to get my window height. So they're 1825, 1830, something like that would be good enough. Alright, so the final thing we need before putting in our site is a satellite image. So I'm going to go to Google Maps. Well, I've already gone to the location we need, which is the corner of Harrington Street and Essex Street in the Rocks, and you can see there is our building. So I've got the scale there at 10 meters, so you can just zoom until you get that, and then control print screen. And in Photoshop, you can actually see I've done this previously. I'll just close that and go and make a new file. Make sure it says clipboard there. If it doesn't say clipboard, you need to try capturing the screen again. Okay, so once you've made your new file, you should be able to go to Edit and choose Paste or Control V, and that will paste in your captured satellite image from the screen. And I'm just going to bring the crop region in there, making sure that I keep that scale bar still. So I want to keep that 10 meters. And there we go, just double click to crop that. That's good enough. And now save as. And we'll change to JPEG. And Harrington satellite image is what I'll call it. So now back into Revit, and I've got my site view there in floor plans. So I'm going to right click on that, duplicate view, duplicate, and then as always rename my copy to view. Site satellite image, we'll call it. Right, so again, under Insert, I can go to Image, find the file I've just saved, click to place it, and then you can see there's our building, much smaller than what we've drawn, so it needs to be scaled. So I'm going to start with the image selected by clicking on the Move tool. I pick that up on the corner of the building in the satellite image, which is about there. Don't worry about being too precise here. And then go to the corner of the wall that I've drawn in Revit. Okay, and so now, with the image still selected, I'm going to go to Rotate, and dragging using the base point icon there, I'm going to drag that base point over to the corner. So you may need to zoom out to find that, and then I'm going to drag onto the corner of the building, start with the angle of the wall in the satellite image, and then bring that around to the angle of the wall that we've drawn in Revit. Okay, so now it just needs to be scaled. So again, with the image still selected, I'm going to click on the Scale tool and start with the corner of the building again. This time bring it over. You might have to use a bit of judgment here to work out where that wall goes to, but I'd say it's to about there. And then for the third point, come over to the corner of the building that we've drawn in Revit. So there we are. So you can see that lines up fairly well. Close enough. You can always maybe that's I think the corner of the building in reality. So if you want to scale it back down a little bit, it's not a bad thing to try. Just going to click on Scale. Again, starting on this corner. So it's come out a little bit too far. We can't actually see that corner, but that's okay. I'm going to just guess. So it's about there, and now bring it back to here. So it's just made the whole thing a bit smaller, and now you can see that lines up a little bit better. It's not really going to make too much difference either way, because we're really using this more to get the position of roads and neighbouring buildings. Okay, so now that I've got that image in there, we can start drawing in our site. And to do that, I'm going to use the Topo Surface tool. So it lives under Massing and Site, and there you'll see Topo Surface. Okay, so to draw this, first I need to know the height of my level, the points that I want to place. So you go to my, say my north elevation, and I can see there that my ground floor, which you might remember from the elevation views, is essentially the street level that we have at the front of the building there, or on the Harrington Street facade. Okay, so I'm going to use that height, 15,100. So let's go back into the satellite image, or the site view with the satellite image, and then back to place point on the ribbon up there. And I'm just going to click a point roughly in line. It's going to move anyway, so it's actually a little bit back from that corner, so just up here somewhere. And that's what I'll leave it at for now. So I'll just place the one point, which is actually not a normal way of creating a topo surface, but I found with sites like this, it's a good method. You'll see why in a moment. So starting with that one point, I'm going to get the rest by duplicating it rather than using place point over and over again, which would be a more common method in other situations. So just remember that's a bit unusual this way, but again makes sense for this site. So with that point selected, I'm going to, so notice I've switched to my site view just so it's easier to see without that satellite image in the way. We don't need the satellite image anymore for the time being. So I'm going to click copy, and just bring that point down so that it's on the other side of the building. So I've got 2 points there, both at the same height. And now I'm going to select both of those with a window. Click copy again. This time get a base point on the front wall there and bring it back so that it's roughly in line with the wall on the left, with the corner of the wall. So I'm just zooming in there to get that fairly close to the corner. I've actually gone a little bit too far, so I'll just nudge that back with the arrows on the keyboard. There we go. I just want that to pass pretty close to the corner there. Okay, so I've got there my 4 points set out in a rectangle, and that's the reason I used copy to create them rather than place point. It's a bit harder to line them up using place point. Right, so now I'm going to go to my north elevation, and I need to move these points up, but to find the distance I'm going to use my AutoCAD drawing. I'm going to use measure and measure from the corner of the building here, so the corner's all the way up here, and measure down to, so again turn ortho on, so measure down to be in line with the ground, which is going to give us a distance of, let's say 3010, I think is good enough there, or even just 3000. Okay, so I'm going to select those points now with a window, click the move tool, click a base point somewhere, and then just bring those up 3000. So we've got a sloping site there. Now you might decide that it's important for your design to show these steps coming down at some point. So if you do need to show that, you can easily change the site to incorporate those. So I'm going to allow for that. I might not put them in perfect detail at the moment, but I will at least allow for it. So I'm going to select the first 2 points, and so notice in the north elevation I'm looking from the side, and the second point is behind the first one that I can see there. So you can always check if you're not sure to see that both are selected, both in properties over here where you've got 2 in brackets, and also down on the status bar on the bottom right. So I'm going to copy, and this time bring my point over to the left. So I've got 2 points there, and then we need another point that is up. Well, actually gives us a measurement there, so let's use that. 1100 is actually the sill height, but the steps would just be slightly below that. I might measure just to see if it's very different. Yeah, 1000. So that's a good, nice round measurement to use. So I'll go with that. Okay, so I'm going to copy again. So leaving those 2 points there, I've selected with a window, which is very important. Make sure you get both points. Going to copy across. So let's say 1500. Again, nice round number. And then again copy. Oh, sorry, not copy. This time move. So I'm going to select those 2 points, and this time move up 1000. Right. So we've allowed for those steps. They can be fine-tuned later. I'd say actually I might even just move that over another 500. That slope just looks too much. That's better. Okay, so let's have a look at that in 3D. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of a site. I'd say that the road there is not following that slope exactly, and we'll adjust that to suit as well. So going back into the site, let's go to the site with satellite this time. So you can see now that I've put a surface in that it's covering our image, so I can just change the graphics display there on the view control bar to wireframe. Right, so I'm going to make a window around these points and then copy all of them down. So you can see there, these are the 2 points for the stairs. Now we know that they go at an angle, so I'm going to just, with the window selection, select the 2 points just to the right, and also let's just actually do this one to the right, and then the one that's further to the right, I'll bring that up a bit further. So I'm just trying to get that in line with the footpath. Unfortunately, we've got the trees there covering it, so it's, well, and also the footpath does curve around there. We'll worry about the curve afterwards. I'm just trying to get the heights here, so it's roughly in line with that footpath. And that one can probably come up a little bit higher as well. This one can come down a bit. So I'm using the up and down arrows just to keep those in a straight line. I just found it makes it much easier if you do keep things in line as much as possible. You get a lot more control. Okay, so now we have a series of points there, and again, just to make it easier for you to see, I'll switch to the other side for you so you can see those. Okay, so I'm going to select these 2 points up here, because remember they're for the levels for the stairs in the footpath that won't be carrying through across the road, so I'm going to delete those. And then I'm going to copy the 2 points that are next to the stairs up a little bit. And now I'm going to make sure they're both still selected and go to the north elevation. This should give you a good idea why the topo surface is set up the way it is. So I'm going to use the arrow tool there and bring those up a little bit. So the first one is okay, that's almost in line with what the level of the road will be, but this other one, I'm just going to select it by itself and now bring it up separately. So you can see that I'm just bringing those 2 points up to where the road level would be. We might need to change those. It's a bit of an unusual street, this one. I think we might actually have to do some more adjustments to this later, but for now, just to give you an idea, you can see then, especially if I change the view to shaded, what's happening with the site there. So we've got the stairs and the road. So I think actually this would need to come back. So this point here, what I'll do is back in the site, I'm going to copy that across. Okay, so hopefully you can see what that's doing. Now, if anything, we've probably got the road there a bit too high because it's going above the footpath. So I'm going to select these points here. There for the road, remember. And then over here we'll get, I think, this point and this point. Then back to the north elevation. Use the down arrow on the keyboard just to bring those down. So there we go. If you find that this is sloping too much, if that doesn't look natural, you can always bring that point back up. But no, you don't want this line to change too much, so we might have a think about that, but let's have a look. So there we are. So you can see there now that's looking fairly natural. Okay, so from that point on, continue copying points. So I'm going to select these points along this edge here, back into the north elevation, and then using the copy tool, just copy this down to get a similar slope to what we have up here. And then the same on the other side. So we're going to select those points there with a window, and then copy at roughly the same angle. Doesn't need to be exact, so there we go, just using up and down arrows to fine tune that. So the important thing there is that the points that are touching the building are fairly accurate. The other points are really just diagrammatic to give a visual impression of the surrounding site levels. Okay, so again, that might be a little bit too low. So another good trick there, actually, if you want to bring these up but not have the issues that I had before, you could always copy these points across a little bit. So we just need a little bit more detail in there to keep that under control. Yep. Okay, so I've just selected those points along that edge, and then back to site. Now I can copy those. Oops, that last one I think was going a bit too far. Yep. Okay, so then these points can hopefully come up a little bit. And I might do that in the east elevation, so you can see there a bit more clearly what's happening. So just bring those up. Okay, there we go. So things like this contour line here, you probably want to avoid things like that generally. So a good way is, again, just to add in more points. So if I copy this point across, so select that again. You can copy in a 3D view. So that should bring that contour line back down. And if you have issues like this here, where it's, you can see there now wrapping a little bit unusually, you can always again copy this point across, and that will help to refine the site. So just think of it as like a cling wrap, wrapping over all of your levels initially. Don't try and break up your different materials. So we've got the road there coming down to a flat, and then the footpath is a bit different, so that's okay. A lot of this is going to be cut away as well afterwards, so I'm just going to finish that for now, and then have a look at how we can break that up into different materials. So back to site with satellite image. Right, so I'm just zooming out a bit there so I can see the roads. Going to massing inside again, and this time go to Subregion. So they're using the line tool. Going to click points along the edge of the footpath. So there's the footpath edge there. Again, we can't really see where that edge is under the trees, so I'm just going to guess. I think that's pretty close. And then it comes across to here. We'll change this to a curve in a moment, but I'll just bring that for now over to the end of the curve. And then across the road. Notice I'm drawing outside of the topo surface. That is absolutely fine. So I'm going to click a point over here. Okay, so the road narrows and is much wider on this side, so that's all okay. Alright, so I'll just get the other side of the footpath here. A bit hard to see there, but I think that's close. And just close that. Okay, so I'll come back and change those to curves afterwards, but for now I'll just finish that. Right, so you can see already that it has a new surface for the road there. Now, I want to extend my main topo surface to include what I've done with the subregion, so that's not a problem. I can just go back now to edit surface once I've selected that topo surface. So to extend it up, I'm essentially just going to move those points. I can move them much further than they are. Now, to go to the right, I need to copy these points. So I'm going to go into my north elevation. Notice I've selected them in the site view first, so that's very important that you select them there. Oops, I'll just do that one more time so you can see. So selecting them with a window, and you can see I've got 4 points there. You might have a different number, we just need to get all the points along a certain edge. Now in my north elevation, I can copy those. Now remember here, this is actually road, so I'm going to bring those up a little bit using the arrows on the keyboard. Just going to nudge those until they're a bit closer to this point over here, because remember that's our ground level and this road would be fairly flat. And then I can copy across, and then back to my site with image. So that's not far off the edge of the footpath, but I just still need to go across a bit, so I'm just going to keep using the arrows on the keyboard to nudge those further across to where that building begins actually, because that would be where the footpath changes height and starts sloping down from there. We'll just say it is anyway. So now back to north, and I can copy those points yet again to get it to slope away even more. That's probably sloping a bit too much, so I'll just use the arrows on the keyboard just to bring that up a little bit. So you can see that looks fairly realistic now, that slope. Back into the 3D view, and you can see that automatically the extra detail I've drawn with the subregion has been added in. Now I can extend that further. There's my subregion there, so I can select that and go back to edit it in, let's say, the site with satellite image view again. So again, I've got it still selected, so I can go to edit boundary, and here I might just drag these lines up. And this one across. That's good enough. Could maybe change that angle a little bit. Just join them together again. Okay, so if you want to put curves in place of those chamfered edges, you can easily just draw arcs, endpoint to endpoint, bring this out, and then delete the line. Just do that on each corner. So this is probably the most important one next to the building. Oops. Okay. So, finishing now. It should tell me if there's any errors. Nope, that's all good. And let's have a look in 3D. Okay, so there's some issues over here, but that's not really going to matter because we're going to cut a lot of that off anyway. So I'm going to save this. And let's look at just finishing off that topo surface, particularly getting it to display properly. Okay, so I'm going to select the subregion. I don't want to have a different material for that. Really, that's the purpose of it, to have a material that's different to the rest of the site. So I'm going to change the material over here in properties now, where it says by category. I'm going to browse, and then find a site material, site hardcore. That'll do. I'm going to right click, duplicate that, and we'll call it site tarmac. So in graphics, I'll change the color there just to a dark grey. And then under appearance, I'll right click on the appearance tab, go to replace, and then in the appearance library, go down to site work, and there I'll just double click on asphalt 2. So that's done. Just click OK there. You can see now that's got a different material to the rest of the site. So it's very clear that's a road. And in the other views, that should show clearly as the site that it is. So let's go into the north elevation. You can see there it's showing, but we have the ground line there, which we want, but also a hatch for the site which we don't want. So I'm going to remove that by selecting my site, then going right click, override graphics in view by element. And then going down to cut patterns, just turn visible off. Click OK. And there we are. So we've got a nice elevation without the ground hatch showing. It's also a bit large, showing too much of the site, so I'm going to turn on the visibility for the crop region using the crop button that has the light bulb on it down the bottom. Select the rectangle there, and then just bring the borders in so they're a bit closer to the building. Okay, that'll do for now. And then I'll maybe turn the visibility off for the crop region, so we can repeat that for each elevation. Probably the north and the east elevations are the important ones. So again, select the site. That's the so you've got to watch out. The subregion and the topo surface are different things. So there, I'm just making sure I get the topo surface and not the subregion. So again, right click, override graphics in view by element. And the cut patterns turn off visible. There we go, and then crop the view. Okay, so again, hide the crop region. Now you might have noticed that the north elevation has the road covering maybe part of the building that you really want to see. So let's have a look in the site floor plan. And you can see there the elevations are a fair distance from the building. So I'm going to select those using a window, in other words left to right, to go around the symbol which gets both the elevation symbol and the view. So there should be two things here, common and two in brackets. So I'm going to use the arrows on the keyboard just to nudge that so that it's closer to the building. It's a bit too close, bring that back a bit. And I might do that with the east elevation as well. Just bring that a bit closer. Now the south and the west elevations aren't so important because we probably won't show those in the end. They're adjoining buildings on those sides. I'm also going to bring the section line in just to tidy that up, and also bring the view range in, or the crop region in for the section line, just using those arrows there. Okay, so now we'll have a look. Let's just have a look at the north elevation first. Okay, so you can see there it is almost showing the levels that we want. We've got there something else. That's the so what is that? Oh, yep. So that is the that's the topo surface there, and we've got there. That's right. The line there of the ground coming down below that. So I'm going to just adjust that so it's showing correctly. I just haven't put enough detail in. So I've done the one side of the steps, but I didn't do the other side. So not a problem. I can select the topo surface, clicking on the outside line there, edit surface. Okay, so you can see here the detail, and the trick to getting abrupt changes in level, which is really what we're dealing with here, the trick to it is just putting in lots of extra points. Okay, so there, I'm going to leave those points there. I'm going to copy those down here, and then it doesn't matter if they go through the building, that's absolutely fine. So it just continues through, and then I might even copy. See how we've got these contours going down at a funny angle. Just going to copy those across a little bit as well. Now actually this one here we probably don't need, and oh no, sorry, maybe we do. So we'll try to bring that up a little bit. So it's just a matter of getting those contours to behave. Sometimes you do have to adjust the points, so I'm just going to use the arrows there to do this. Okay, so then in the north elevation, okay, so now I can bring these points up a little bit just to follow the slope. There we go. So that's again where the steps come down. Now if we want that to show in the elevation as the line that's being cut, the ground line in other words, then all we need to do is go to here. So there's the elevation symbol. Clicking on the arrow you can see the line of that elevation. So I'm going to leave the symbol there, but I'm going to bring that line down to where the stairs are. So no one will see this on the drawing, but we'll know where it is. Okay, so let's go and have a look at that north elevation now. Just double click on the arrowhead to open that quickly. Getting there, but we can see there we've got a bit of a problem with the site dropping down suddenly. So again, select the, let's have a look at that. I've just got to change some of my heights. Okay, so just going to select my topo surface, edit surface. Let's see where the issue is. Oh, it's just here, right? So it's because we're really going through there. So let's see. Maybe if we take this point here and try moving that across. We're probably going to put a floor over this to cover a lot of this topo surface anyway. We just want the topo surface mainly for the earth hatch. So there you can see that's going down, and I do have these points a bit, well, no, they're not really too low. So let's see what's happening over here. That should be pretty good now. So let's have a look at the north elevation again. Still going down, that's a bit unusual. So I might try deleting. So I'm just orbiting here to try and see that from the side. Now I think it's just because it's cutting through here, so I'm just going to try something else and move that a bit closer. So if I select that, yeah, so the contours there a bit messy. But if I move that elevation view a little bit closer, and then we'll try fine-tuning that in another way by, again, going back to these contours and trying to copy these points along here, which will make those contours much smoother. But then remember, we need to still go into the north elevation and adjust them so that they follow the slope. So you can see that's fixed that problem at the top of the stairs, and now I can just bring, with the arrow key, that height up so that the slope's a bit more natural. So you can see it there. Now I finally got it. So there we are. So that's good. We've got the slope there following the angle of the street. We can even maybe bring that up a little bit more to make it a bit smoother, and then going down nicely where the stairs are, and then across again. Finish. Okay, so nearly done, but there's one last major issue with the ground, and that is that it's going through the building at the moment. So we need to go into the, well, either the ground floor view or even the site will do for this. And then again, under massing and site, you have building pad. So I'm just going to use that to put in a essentially an excavated area in this site. So before I do that, I'm going to change the height offset there to -150. And then just with the pick wall option still on, I'm going to pick the outside edge of all of those walls. Including those ones that stick out there a little bit. And now just wherever I need to use trim to join those walls together to make sure they all connect. Or those lines together, sorry, to make sure they're all connected and we've got a closed shape. And now I'll just finish that. And we'll check in the section view, again just double clicking on the arrowhead there. And you can see now it's brought the site down so that it doesn't go through the building. You can see there is the building pad that I've just added, with space there for a floor. I still want to have a floor above that afterwards. Okay, so in 3D we'll just have a look at that as well. Okay, so there we are. So we've got a nice, reasonably realistic looking site there. We're going to probably cover up lots of that with the building adjoining as well. But then, remember I said before that we've got issues on the edge there that we'll cover up by cutting away this site. To do that in a 3D view, I'm just going to duplicate this view first. Right click and then duplicate. View and then duplicate. And then we'll rename this view and I will call it isometric view 1. Or actually let's call it what it is. It's going to be northeast. Northeast 1. Okay, so that's, you can see on the view cube. You can always make that exactly northeast if you like. Okay, so then in view properties, so over here, 3D view is up in properties. So I've got the view properties and I'm going to go down to section box, tick that box. And then you can see there we've got this box around the site, and I'm going to bring that back in on each side. So for now, let's see if we can go through the road there. Bring this up a little bit. And on the other side. And at the back as well. Okay. So you can see now that the site's been cut by the section box, we get a nice... sorry. We've got a nice earth hatch there. So finally I'll just bring that section box up because the building will be much higher. And then I don't want to see that section box. So I'll just right click, hide in view elements. So there we are. Right, so the next video I will go into the extending of the walls and putting openings. Sorry, and how that connects to the street and the site that we've just done.